stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet. Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforge series.
On the last episode of Left Behind, Emile discovered that he had accidentally run into the amniotic sac of a star child, and we spent basically that entire episode trying to save the star child's life, which was done through a form of a radiation therapy before Emile wound up releasing it back into space, having reached the other side of a wormhole. That's the short version of it all. As usual, if you want the details, obviously go back and listen to the episode, but once Emile came out on the other side and released the Star Child, he had reached the destination that he'd been seeking for quite a while now, which is the, to his knowledge, unnamed planet that Fern calls home. At some point or another, the ship that Emile once served gathered Fern up from this planet, and we left off with Emile and Fern standing at a window in orbit around this planet, knowing that they had finally reached Fern's home. And as the two of them are standing there at that window, an alert goes off. This time nothing dangerous exactly. This alert is just that a message has been received, and Emile heads back to the cockpit to check it out, and he sees that the radio picked up a signal from that planet. It becomes very clear very quickly that this is an SOS message from a crew of a ship called the Crux. They've crash landed on this planet, which they gave out sector coordinates for how to find it, as well as more detailed information about where they are on the planet's surface. They call for evacuation help, saying that they will not be able to make it off on their own. And at this point, if this were a TV show, we would see a title card that reads 24 hours earlier. So I want to do something a little bit different with this session. We're not going to play Emile Spencer this time. We're going to be playing one of the crew of the Crux. This is a person who goes by the name of Vert. When the title card fades back away, we're now down below on the planet itself. We see three forms sitting around a campfire, which is the only illumination we have in this perpetual night. The planet is utterly covered with these dark clouds up above. Swirling dust high up in the atmosphere. It's cold here, it's dark, the embers float up towards the sky. There are three figures sitting in the light of the fire, around an iron pot that's bubbling and stewing some kind of soup over it. The first of these figures is clearly wounded. They're sitting on the ground, one of their legs is outstretched in front of them in a kind of rudimentary splint. All the same, they seem to be keeping themselves busy, their hands occupied with mechanical and electronic tools, their hands inside a cavity inside the second of these two, a robotic figure with their name stamped directly down the side of their torso. Very directly, it just says, Ironsides. The first figure, Dash, is clearly struggling at the moment.
Come on, get on out of there. You want to... God damn it!
Dash throws a tool across the fire and it clatters right by the third figure, a much broader-shouldered and muscular individual by the name of Vert, who's got their back leaned up against a log and their head turns in response to the tool hitting a little bit too close to them for comfort. Vert shouts across the fire, "Hey, come on! Watch where you're throwing stuff!" Dash rubs his hands along his temples and just says,
"Every time I think I have it, the damned thing shorts out and gives me a shock, and getting a little bit tired of getting electrical burns on my fingers. So perhaps you'll forgive me a moment."
"I don't really care much about the reasoning. Just, are you going to be able to do it or not?"
"I don't know that we're going to be able to get Ironsides back up and running."
Vert stands up at this news, puts his hands on his hips, and just gives out a very deep sigh of... Then he starts nodding and quickly moves on to, "Okay, if that's what you're saying, then we need to move on to the next plan." "What is the next plan?"
"What do you mean, next plan? There's only the one plan. The only thing that's changing is that Ironsides isn't going to be the one to do it. It has to be you." Me? I mean, come on.
And Dash gestures up and down at their legs and general wounded area.
Do I look like I'm in much of a condition to do anything that requires moving around right now? Of course, it has to be you.
Look, even if we do assume that I can get there, I wouldn't know the first thing about powering up their systems and being able to launch it. Why do you think I'd even be able to pull it off? The whole point was that Ironsides could do it.
Well, Ironsides can't. Because there is no Ironsides.
Well, not the iron parts anyway.
But you do bring up a good point. We need this to be delivered to a precise location, and I don't know that I trust your ability to do that either. However, while I may not be able to get Ironside's body operational, his mind is still workable, and I do think that we can download that onto your communicator. Bring that along and plug it into their system, and Ironsides can do the rest. All you have to do is brave the terrain and get to the facility. Look, it's our only chance.
No, I know you're right. We're not going to live long on this hellhole if we don't get help.
And we can't get help as long as all of that cloud cover is blocking our signals out of here. We have to clear it.
Which is why we need to blow a hole in the clouds. I remember. It just sounded like a lot better of a plan when we were sending somebody who couldn't die, and when I could stick around with you to protect you from... well, you know.
Look, I'm not crazy about that part of it either. But we have to gamble on our successes one way or another.
I'll get inside the remains of our ship and lock up as best I can while you're gone. Think I can at least get that far.
And, of course, if while you're in there you happen to get any kind of sign of the key, well,
yeah, I wouldn't pass it up, don't worry. Just let me get him one last meal and one last night of sleep. Vert tosses his comlink over to Dash. You just work on getting Ironsides out of his body and into there. Be done by the time I wake up. And so Vert indeed scoops one more cupful of this pretty thin-looking soup out of the cauldron, swallows it down, props his head up on a rock, and gets one more night of sleep, while Dash continues tinkering away on Ironside's body, getting his mind removed from the chassis. The following morning, as Vert is now fully suited up in this head-to-toe powered armor, got a pretty heavy energy rifle slung along his back, Dash is handing his comlink back to him and says,
Now, Vert, you do understand that your comlink now contains my life's work on it, yes?
I know.
Please take extra special care that nothing happens to it. Get it back safe. Can you do that for me?
Dash, I swear to you, I will consider Ironside's mind my new ward. I will not let anything happen to him. Now, if this were my main character in like the full-on game, this is the moment where I would have Vert swear an iron vow to protect this comlink and do this whole mission, basically. But in the name of this little bit more experimental session where we're just following just a bit of a side character, this session I'm not going to be worried at all about vows or marking progress or anything like that. We're still going to make moves. I know I haven't made any yet. I do have stats for this character, and I'm going to make moves and do the appropriate things, but I'm not going to worry about specifically filling vows. But with that in mind, why don't we make the first roll of this game as Vert takes his comlink back and starts heading off on this journey to what they've called the facility. To set the scene a little bit and give a little bit better of a sense of where Vert is going to be traveling, the campsite is a little bit in the middle of nowhere. It's a bit of a wasteland kind of thing. Last time we brought up this planet, I compared it a little bit to like the real world in the Matrix. We're seeing black landscapes, dark clouds overhead, and a perpetual night. However, that's not true for the entire planet. And as we see Vert heading away from the crashed ship behind them, the Crux, there is something sticking up on the distance on the horizon. In a wide view, we can tell there are buildings in the distance. Human-made looking buildings. There's architecture. They're decrepit, but they do exist. Some kind of a city in the distance, high up on a bit of a plateau. So let's undertake an expedition. We are going to say that this is a dangerous expedition. And Vert is going to be making this by staying vigilant. Now, Vert's stats are definitely different from Emile's. Vert's got 1 edge, 1 heart, 3 iron, 2 shadow, and 2 wits. I suppose we're going to be spending some time with Vert, so we might as well describe him a little bit better. It's got for just a couple of quick details that might paint a picture a little bit better, flat top haircut, and stubble that looks like you could use as sandpaper. Just hard growth, gritty, certainly not softened by any kind of beard oil or anything like that. Pretty craggy face in the way of like Edward James almost, like just a lot of texture to his skin. We can see some signs of scarring that look like they were caused by a pretty big fire at some point. This is clearly a person who's been through some shit. But Vert is going to undertake this expedition by staying vigilant. We're rolling with his wits, which is +2. Okay, we're going to start this off with a weak hit, so we're going to reach a waypoint, but this progress costs you. Envision the location and mark progress for the rank of the expedition, but choose one. Either suffer costs en route, make a suffer move -2, or 2 suffer moves -1, or face a peril at the waypoint, envision what you encounter. Now, as far as stats, it should also be noted that I am not starting this character off with the stats of a fresh-faced new character. No, they've been trying to survive here for a little bit, so supply is completely at 0. They are currently unprepared. His spirit is only at 2 right now. Health is good, though. Physically, Vert is fine. Momentum, however, has also been pretty terrible. I've decided to start Vert off with a momentum of -3. So long way to build up. We may see that kind of dice cancellation coming into play for the first time, since I've never let Emile get down in some negative momentum. Not my real character. Anyhow, we don't have a lot to lose as far as the suffer moves. I don't want him to be missing out on health already. Why don't we face a peril, though? But before we do, the waypoint itself, I envision as just a pretty standard kind of stop. I think Vert has found a bit of a trickling stream in the path. Like, he's not yet gotten all the way to the plateau to be able to climb up to the city, but along the way he crosses just a natural body of water. He's been heading to it in order to be able to refill his canteen, drink some water, stuff like that. But as he approaches, he sees that there's some kind of a creature that's already there at the stream, drinking from it. It's in this clearing. There's not a lot of life on this planet, but there is some. We're going to randomly determine what kind of environment this creature is in. As long as it's not space, we'll accept the answer, because it could be a creature inside of the stream, it could be a land creature, or it could be a creature in the air, and we roll land. It is insectoid, or it has an exoskeleton. You know, I could roll the rest of these oracles, but you know what that makes me think is that maybe the captured irradiated insect creature that we saw earlier on Cinder, the one that had originally been captured and studied on the Reacher, maybe that also came from this planet. So rather than regenerate all of that and make it work again, let's say it's just another one of those creatures, which, as you might remember, is pretty massive. It's a giant mantis creature that is also pretty constantly releasing a pretty steady dose of radiation. Perhaps Vert's power armor indeed picks up on that. There's an internal Geiger counter that starts going off higher and higher, recognizing that this creature is there, and it is currently drinking from the water, perhaps. But because this is a full peril, I think that it's clear to say that Vert steps on a twig or something. It makes enough noise that the mantis creature looks over and notices Vert. I think it hisses in a very menacing way at first. They've got a good distance between them. And Vert, on something of instinct, just like fires his gun off a little bit into the air, like not at the creature, but just trying to scare it off. And when that happens, I want some others of these mantis creatures to just like emerge up from the water. So there's kind of just a whole cadre of them. It becomes clear pretty quickly that these mantises are looking to take him down and probably eat him. So let's enter the fray. In this case, I think it is fair to say that we are facing off against our foe. Like, we're both plenty aware of each other, so this is going to be a heart move. Sadly, Vert only has a heart of 1. The good news is, however, he's much, much better equipped for combat in general than Emile has ever been. So I think he's going to be okay. We're just going to set this as a dangerous combat as well because he's so well equipped. His gun probably is a little bit low on ammo, but it can blast out a lot of damage, so I don't think it would be too hard to take on even a group of these things. So, Mantis group by the river, combat. Dangerous. I think his objective is just not even to kill them all. Like, he just wants to drive them off, really. He doesn't have any real qualms about shooting them, but he'd rather save the energy and not have to, like, actually kill them all, but ideally just drive them away to leave them alone. And ideally be able to drink some water from the river, though it's probably a little bit suspect at this point if they've been hanging out inside of it. So let's roll this heart move. With another weak hit, we get to choose one, either 2 momentum or you are in control. Ooh, I mean, our momentum is all the way at -3. We do need to build it up if we want to have any kind of hopes at much of anything later on, but we know how hard it is to not be in control. That being said, I think I'm indeed going to take the momentum. The idea of being all the way down at -3 is very scary to me. So we are not going to start in control, as very quickly these mantises clearly have a bit of a pack tactics to them. Perhaps they even share a bit of a hive mind, and so it makes it all the easier to outmaneuver Vert, get around him, and he's having trouble keeping track of all of them. And before he can even keep track of it, one has gotten behind him, runs at him quicker than you might expect, swinging a bladed arm at him. And he's going to have to react under fire to try and dodge this. Vert notices at the last second and tries to just knock the arm away before it can hit anything important by just taking his gun and spinning it around in such a way to just knock the bladed arm out of the way before it can actually connect. So we are going to react under fire with iron here, because we are indeed blocking or diverting with force or taking the hit. We're not taking the hit, but we're definitely going to be just sending this along. And because I have the armored asset on this character, when you face danger, react under fire, or clash against physical attacks or impact, you may put trust in your armor's strength. If you do, preset your action die to 4. On a strong hit with a match, take +2 momentum as you build confidence, make an impression on your foes, or improve your position. Well, if for no other reason than to actually get to explore this asset that we wouldn't ordinarily get to, I am indeed going to do that. So I'm just going to roll 2 challenge dice with the assumption that I rolled a 4 on the action die. We get to add our iron to it, so we're doing this against a 7, basically. I am going to... let's see how this goes. Thankfully, I rolled a 5 and a 6, and both of those numbers are lower than 7, so we get a strong hit, which means you succeed and are in control, take +1 momentum. So in addition to the 1 we get from the move, we get 2 from our armored asset, as indeed, finally things are picking back up and Vert is in an environment that he understands better. We can see on his face a bit of a resigned look during it all. This is not his favorite environment, but it is one that he understands very well. And we build his momentum all the way back up to +2 with that move as we knock one of these mantises out of the way. And I think because it was a strong hit, not only did we knock the arm aside, but even are able to push it back a little bit, getting it to stumble and allowing Vert to really take control of the situation, which he will certainly do by just trying to blast around one of the other ones. And of course we have the gunner asset as well, because we are wielding a heavy ranged personal weapon. So we're going to be rolling the strike move, and when you strike, I get to choose one before rolling. Either pin them down, which would allow us to add +1 and take +1 momentum on a hit, or make them hurt, mark progress on a hit. If I do make them hurt, mark progress on a hit, and I get a hit on a strike, which already marks progress twice, that's 6 progress right there on a single hit. However, Vert has a background vow, and I haven't given him any particular progress on it, but Vert's background vow is, I will save as many lives as I have taken by learning to be a doctor. So I don't think, because of that vow, I don't think Vert really wants to add to the body count by leaning into something like make them hurt. So even though it would be a great option for us, I'm going to do pin them down instead. Vert is just trying to use just enough to get them back into a better maneuverable situation so he's not surrounded by them, doing some amount of suppressive fire while he moves into a better position so that they're all more in front of him. So taking the pin them down option, we're going to add a +1 to this and take 1 momentum on a hit. So let's do this strike with edge, because this is attacking at a distance. We're going to need that +1 because his edge is only 1. Let's see how this goes. Okay, we do get a weak hit out of this. The challenge dice were decent, but so was my action die. And so we get to mark progress twice, but you expose yourself to danger. You are in a bad spot. So we lose control on this, but we do get 4 boxes of progress, having marked this twice. I think perhaps the exposure to new danger comes that when Vert is maneuvering, he's able to get them all back like in front of him, but has to sort of do this while sidestepping in a way where he can't really watch what he's doing quite as much. And as a result, I think he stumbles over a gnarled root that is near the river. It was covered up a little bit, and in so doing, he's going to fall into the river. And it's deep enough that it's indeed submerging him. And in this moment, I think all 4 of the group are going to lumber over to him and pounce on top of him. So now there are 4 of these things like fighting for position on top of him, holding him down in the water, getting ready to release a blast of radiation. And so we're going to react under fire to this to try and get out from under the water, because I think that while this is full body armor, it is not watertight, and so you can definitely still drown in it. So Vert is just going to simply try and use all of his strength, and perhaps a little bit augmented by just the powered armor, giving him a little bit more strength than he might ordinarily have as just a human being, to just utterly throw them off of his body. Now, in this case, I don't think that we're not reacting under fire to a physical attack or impact. Our armor is not going to be helping us. We're trying to avoid drowning at the moment. So we're not going to do our preset the action die to 4 or anything like that. The armor isn't doing it. But we are still making an iron move, and we're pretty good at iron. So, react under fire with iron. Let's see what we can do. We get a weak hit, as my challenge dice were a 5 and a 10. So we avoid the worst of the danger or overcome the obstacle, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move -1, and you stay in a bad spot. So avoiding the worst of the danger would involve, I think, no longer being pinned down in the water. He's able to shove them off of him, but it's not before they release their own blast of radiation at him. Because we know that's something they can do. And maybe he'll get his own kind of weird mutation like Emile got. Something that'll manifest only later. As a result, I think it's fair to say that his health is going to go down a little bit. We'll take our suffer move to that as new radiation burns form probably just right there on his face. They're up by his head. So he gets blasted with radiation right on top. We're going to suffer -1 to our health. And let's endure that harm, because he seems like somebody who could do that pretty well, and our health is still at 4. So, rolling endure harm, and we get a miss, unfortunately. It's worse than you thought. Suffer an additional -1, or lose momentum -2. No, our momentum is finally positive. I'm going to do the additional -1 health. If your health is 0, it's not, so I don't have to worry about marking wounded or permanently harmed. But it brings our health down to 3. It's clearly this dose of radiation, it burns more immediately, and I think it even kind of like gets him kind of across the eyes, and it's a flash that part of the reason why he's still not in control is he can't even see all that well. It's bright and in his eyes, and he's still a bit dazed by it all as he stumbles trying to get to his feet against the slow current of the river. And one of them tries to just take him out at the knees and bring him back down, coming in from behind, having chased up after him. So this time as we react under fire, I think it is more about just, once again, kind of taking the hit and just trusting in the armor to be able to absorb it all without knocking him over. Like, this is head-to-toe covering stuff, so if it can just absorb the kinetic impact, he'll be able to keep his footing. So we are going to lean into our armored thing again. I will preset my die at 4. Oh, I'm sorry. I misread the armored thing. On a strong hit with a match, I take +2 momentum as I build confidence. Our momentum is going to be back at 0 instead of 2. It won't affect anything that already happened, but that only happens if you get a match, which we didn't do. The main effect is just we get to preset the action die to 4, which I'm doing again as we just take this hit and try to keep our footing. And rolling a 4 and a 3 on our challenge dice, we easily get a strong hit on this, which allows us to succeed and be in control. We take +1 momentum, which now does finally get us into a positive momentum. Not an amount we can do anything with, it's only a +1, but we are finally building it up. More importantly, we're in control. So the Mantis tries to just knock him down by just tackling into him at low down at the knees. But in this moment, Vert just kind of widens their stance, presses their feet down. The armor absorbs and kind of deflects the impact a little bit. Perhaps it even can manifest a little bit of a reactionary pushback of kinetic force that is how it softens the blow. It's like a smart armor that analyzes threats and reacts imminently. So it pushes back as it kind of sets his feet for him and knocks this thing back. It's not able to deal enough to get him off his feet, and it buys him enough time to clear his eyes from the kind of flashbang-like effect of having been hit with a bunch of radiation. And so now that he's in control, once again, he's going to have to use this opportunity to just strike at them, blasting away. This time, however, there's one in close quarters, and I think he's going to lean into the fact that, one, he doesn't want to use up any more of the energy in this rifle, and two, he's just better with iron anyway. So I think all he's going to do is just rear the gun back and just wallop the mantis upside the head to try and just really knock it off its feet. I think it's also because he's kind of surmised a little bit that these creatures seem to be reacting so completely in sync with each other that they've got a bit of this hive mind going, and maybe knocking out one could possibly even have effects on the others. So anyway, striking with iron. We're not using our gunner possible. I guess we are wielding a heavy ranged personal weapon, but we're not using it at range, so I don't think it counts. We're not using our gunner asset, we're just going to strike with a big old rifle butt hit. And we get... Oh no, we miss. The fight turns against you. You're in a bad spot and must pay the price. Now, in the name of keeping things moving, I think I'm going to just roll on the pay the price table. Use that for inspiration, and I get your action causes collateral damage or has an unintended effect. I think the unintended effect is going to be that as he tries to wallop this thing upside the head, instead its mantis jaws just clack down on the gun, rip it free from his hands, and throw it into the distance beyond the other two mantises. So it utterly disarms him, very much putting him in a bad spot. He needs to get back to his gun. Meanwhile, the other mantises all share the idea that Vert is clearly up close and personal, a bit of a physical presence, and can definitely stand toe-to-toe with them. So they would be much better suited at trying to attack him at range. And so all three of them simultaneously work to just blast radiation out at him as he attempts to just definitely not just take the blow, that would be terrible, but he is going to try to actually dive down into the water to obscure where he is, try and lose himself in there so that he can emerge and race towards the gun. He's trying to confuse them. So he's going to react under fire with shadow as he tries to just get a hiding spot, basically. So he dives down and we get a weak hit. You avoid the worst of the danger or overcome the obstacle, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move -1. You stay in a bad spot. I think in this case, the idea is he doesn't take more blasts of radiation. He's going to lose one of the momentum that he's worked on so hard. He's back down to 0 momentum because in order for this plan to work, he has to stay under the water for a fair amount of time. And when he does, he's coming up, he's sputtering a little bit from he's like gasping for air a little bit. He's not really in a wonderful position to just immediately charge at the gun. In fact, when he does emerge, clearly these mantises are smart enough to recognize the gun has been this threatening weapon of a tool. When he comes up and clears the water from his eyes, he sees that one of them has in its strong bladed arms the gun in both of them, and it is trying to just use all of its musculature to just cut it in half, to just utterly break this gun, which would be a real problem. So in this case, the reacting under fire is not doing anything directly to him, but he's trying to avoid the danger of losing this weapon. So I think rather than do react under fire, this time I'm actually going to clash, because we're going to fight back while in this bad spot. It's a little bit more of a risk-reward kind of thing, but Vert is going to run in towards the one that is there trying to break up his gun, taking blows from the others along the way and just trusting in the armor to be able to deal with it. He's trying to just run in there and tackle it down to the ground before it can break his gun. The whole time being surrounded and attacked from all sides with it. This is why it's not a strike. This is a full-on clash. We're just getting in the mix. But we are doing it at close quarters, so we get to roll iron. And let's see what happens. And I suppose this is actually still using armored as intended. We are clashing against physical attacks or impact. That's part of the description of why this is a clash. So I can preset my action die to 4, which I'm going to do again. We're going to use the benefit of our armor here, allowing him to just ignore everything as he rushes in to tackle this one. Oh, we were close to getting a strong hit with a match. It was a 4 and a 3, not 2 4s or 2 3s. We don't quite get it, so we don't get the bonus 2 momentum, but importantly, we get the strong hit by relying on our armor. So on a strong hit, we get to mark progress twice. You overwhelm your foe and are in control. So ignoring most of these hits as a result of the powered armor, runs in, does a diving tackle that knocks it to the ground. The gun comes up in the air and he catches it, brings it down at the one's face. We mark progress twice, which means we're all the way up to 8 progress. We're in control, and I believe he's going to take decisive action to seize the objective in the fight and get them all to run away. So the decisive action in this case is just he accepts, even though he doesn't want to add to his body count. The best way to drive the rest of them off is just point blank range, blow this one's head off while he's on top of it. That's the decisive action. So we're going to roll the challenge dice against 8 and see how this fares. We get a strong hit, so we prevail. Take +1 momentum. If any objectives remain and the fight continues, you're in control. They do not. The rest of them, after he just blows this one's head off, squeal in that insectoid kind of way, just that, and just lumber away into the distance, scattering into different directions to not just be one clump of a target. Vert stands there, his breath heaving, his armor covered in a little bit of a goo, shaking his head, and he says out loud to himself, 406,348. Walks over to the river, starts cleaning the goo off of his armor, slings the gun back on his back, and continues his journey towards the city. Before we continue this expedition, perhaps we might try and continue building up our momentum a little bit. Let's try and secure an advantage. Build this to slowly get to a usable amount. I think perhaps he's got decently high wits here, so I think what his plan is rewriting a little bit. Instead of washing the goo off his body, off his armor, he thinks about it, but then instead changes his mind, goes back and gets more of it, and starts smearing it all over to give himself the smell of both of a mantis, but also maybe the smell of a dead mantis. His hope is that maybe by covering himself in these kinds of pheromones, he might cause others to be less inclined to deal with him. Or if there are other creatures out here, like the mantises are clearly pretty powerful enemies, he can maybe keep other things from attacking him or bothering him. So we're going to secure an advantage with wits as we try and set this up. I suppose it's either wits or trickery. It is kind of a deception plan, or to cover himself in these pheromones. Either way, both shadow and wits are at 2, so it doesn't really matter. So between the two, he's going to try to enact this plan. We only get a weak hit, but that does allow us to choose one, either 2 momentum or a +1 on our next move. I'm going to take the momentum. We're finally up to a full-on 3. We could technically actually gain the benefit of that at some point. With that finished, let's continue this expedition. At this point, I think it is fair to say that he is going to be keeping under the radar. So we're going to move more slowly, but trying to be more specifically cautious against there being other animals or other creatures that might attack him. So we're rolling with plus shadow. Again, that's a +2. And we get, okay, a weak hit. It was just barely not a strong hit. We tried so hard, but sadly a tie does not beat an action die. You gotta actually beat it. So again, we'll reach a waypoint, but the progress costs us. Envision the location and mark progress for the rank of the expedition, but choose one. Suffer moves or facing a peril. I'm going to do a peril again. This time, the waypoint that we're at is that Vert has reached the edge of the plateau. It's a sheer rise that he's got to be able to climb up. And so this waypoint is midway through the climb. And he doesn't have any particular climbing gear or anything like that. They didn't have enough on them. He's fully unprepared for this. So he's just muscling his way up, trying as best as possible to hold on. And I think the peril is that we start hearing the rock wall cracking a little bit. Because part of the problem is that his powered armor, while very much helping him keep grip on this, it's perhaps doing it a little bit too tight. And when he's climbing, he's using more force than he might expect. And it is disrupting pieces of this wall. It's cracking, it's threatening to crumble away. And he's pretty high up in the air already. So we're definitely going to face danger right now as we need to react to the threat of just the piece of wall that he's on crumbling away. Now, in this case, it's just going to be very direct. He's just going to use his strength to climb up faster than the wall can crumble away, basically. Like, he decides very quickly that, yes, the powered armor is actually making this a problem, but if he just climbs faster than it can crumble away, doesn't matter how much wall falls behind him, just going to lean into that. So he keeps going as fast as possible, which in a way is facing danger with armor relying on it, but we're not putting our trust in the armor's strength to like absorb a blow or something. That would be if we fall down. This is just putting our trust in the fact that we can climb faster than this is going to be a problem by just being that strong. You know, I suppose that makes this really more of a speed thing. So in order to make this more the iron, to reflavor a little bit of what I said, it's not that he's just climbing faster than it's crumbling away. It's that he is going to, in one quick motion, like use all of his strength to just hurl himself up as high as possible and re-grab above the point where the wall is crumbling away. So it requires him to just have gotten enough height with this throwing himself up the wall with a mighty tug of the rocks that he's currently holding on to. So we're facing danger with iron. Let's see what we get. All right, we get a strong hit. It is successful. We take +1 momentum, getting us all the way up to 4 now, as indeed he launches himself up, getting away from the wall a little bit. And indeed, we see the part that he was on as he has to like throw it down like that. In order to get that kind of a launch, he had to basically just rip it off. And like so much of what's below him is just tumbling down dozens and dozens of feet. Like he is many stories up. It all falls away beneath him, and it's terrifying for a moment, but he just barely clears up enough to grab the bottom lip of what fell away. But he does get up high enough to grab a more stable part of the wall, secure his fingers into it, and get up onto a little bit of a ledge where he can stop and catch his breath for a little bit. Shit, he says as he looks down and notices like just how far it would be. Vert ponders for a little bit about whether or not the armor would indeed be able to take a fall from this kind of height. And as he gets the kind of vertigo from doing that, decides to think about anything else at the moment. Looking up and seeing he's not that much farther from the top.
The city should be just beyond.
Turns his back to the wall, continues climbing up. Let's continue undertaking this expedition. This time I don't think we're exactly about keeping under the radar, especially having made a loud noise when all of that rock wall crumbled down beneath him. It does also mean it's going to be harder to get back through this route, as there's a big chunk of wall just missing. I think at this point, we're back to just kind of staying vigilant. Yeah, he's just looking out for additional danger, so we're going to do this with wits. It continues to not really matter wits versus shadow, because they're the same stat, but it helps us understand more of like how he's moving through the environment. He's slowed back down. In fact, I think it's perhaps because he's going to be entering this city, which is a full-on, like, post-apocalyptic. Like, it's not grown over because there's not enough life here to do that, but it's just a full-on derelict of buildings. He doesn't know what to expect in there, so he's going to be going with gun drawn, ready for anything that might be using the city as a home. Once again, we get a weak hit, so again, we get to mark progress, but we either have a peril or we suffer along the way. And we've had a couple of perils now, so I think I'm going to go for making either a -2 suffer move or 2 -1s. Let's have him see something that makes him suffer 2 spirit. Like, what might that be? What does he see that as he reaches this waypoint that is such a, like, so dispiriting as to really just hit him to his core like that? I think it's going to have to be he walks into the city and sees just the annihilation that it is here. Like, the reason this city is abandoned is just bodies, like skeletons litter the streets here. It forces him to reflect on some really bad memories from his past about the amount of devastation he's caused to people. We don't get to a number as high as the one he quoted above without being responsible for some very, very mass casualties, and everything here is just reminiscent of that. It looks like quite a bomb has gone off in this city in the past, which it makes him think of his past. It makes him think of the bomb that he's going to have to set off to try and clear the clouds up above. Direct hit to his spirit. Now our spirit is at 0, so we have to roll to resist it. So I either roll spirit or heart, whichever is higher, which is sadly my heart, and that's only 1. So we have to try and resist this, and we actually do get a weak hit, which means because I'm not shaken, I could lose a momentum for 1 spirit back. Right now, though, I think I'd rather just keep the momentum. It's just, I know that I don't typically love being at a spirit of 0, but he takes on the horror all around him. It clearly happened a long time ago, but it resonates too much with him, and he starts having flashbacks. And I think even the way that this manifests is that Vert starts seeing ghostly foes around him that aren't there, like phantoms of old enemies, and starts just, without even realizing he's doing it, firing the gun at these different phantoms all around him, at different buildings, just blasting away at these buildings before he comes back to his senses and realizes it's not real. He's okay. And now just practically hyperventilating, runs into the city trying to just finish this mission as much as possible. He looks and sees the facility he's been looking for in the distance and tries to get there as quickly as possible, which means they're going to try and undertake this expedition with edge, even though he's not good at it. Actually, I think what we're going to do, it's all too much for him. He sees the facility and just beelines for it. So I'm actually going to make a progress roll with our 6 progress that we already have to try and just be at the facility. Like, we're going to finish our expedition here and see what happens. So we're only rolling versus a 6, but we do get a weak hit. So we would mark a reward on his Discovery's Legacy track, but I'm not keeping track of it for this character. But we do face an unforeseen complication at the end of the expedition. So we would make it 1 rank lower, and we have to envision what we encounter. So what is the complication here? He gets to the facility, but of course, like, it's not powered at all. And I think the initial complication is, like, he's on the outside, but he can't get in. The doors are just, they have no power, and they would ordinarily utterly need it to be opened up. But he also can't power them. Like, everything has been blasted away. There's nothing to plug into. He can't get inside as it currently is. And so before he can actually get inside, he's going to have to bypass these doors somehow or find another way in. Now, to speak of the facility itself, now that we're here, we find that what he's been seeking out this whole time, it's a fortified building. We see signs all over the gates on the outside that tell you how you have to turn back. This is a secure facility processing dangerous weaponry. Trespassers will be shot on sight. Now, there aren't any people here to enforce that anymore, but it becomes clear that this is some kind of an armored silo that he is breaking into, and so as a result, these locked powered doors are, even with his powered armor, they are too much for him to be able to just muscle open. It's not possible. He's not that strong, so he's going to have to find a way to bypass them another way. Either some other entrance, or a way to apply more force to these doors than he can currently do as an individual. There's got to be another way in. The facility had people, and people's shit. Shit has to go somewhere. I find the pipes, I find my way in. And so, Vert goes about doing just that. He is going to search the area, trying to... and we're not gathering information exactly, we're not searching for clues, but we are trying to secure an advantage with our wits to try and find what is the best way to get to... How can we access sewer pipes into this facility? What can we find? Can we get a way in? So securing an advantage with wits, and we get a weak hit. So I either get 2 momentum or a +1 on our next move. I think because this is indeed about finding an entrance, this is indeed going to add to our momentum. So I'm taking the 2 momentum as we're really building up towards something now. Because Vert heads a little bit back into the city and finds just like a manhole cover kind of situation where he can go down into a sewer system, starts following it back in the direction of the silo. We hear him counting off paces as he's clearly kept track of exactly how far he's come in what directions. And when he gets to a certain point, reasoning that he is now beneath the silo, he sees that there's not just like an opening to be... There's no hatch on the inside where he can just climb up and be inside the facility. It's not meant for that. But he reasons that he's directly below it, and that maybe he can like blast his way in, and nobody's manning the facility anymore, so it doesn't matter if he makes a lot of noise. If he can just break his way through the floor, that'll work. So I think we're going to do that. I don't think the floor is as protected as the big front doors that were the big front powered doors. So I think it's reasonable that maybe with powered armor, he might have enough strength to indeed just kind of jackhammer his way through by just pounding at the ceiling over and over again until he breaks through. So we're going to do that. When you're a hammer, we are going to face danger here with iron, because this definitely has potential to go wrong. It could all crumble in on him, and that would be a really bad time. But he's going to try it anyway. So just strength, endurance, and aggression. It's kind of all of those things. iron as he tries to bust through the floor. And we get a strong hit. You are successful. Take +1 momentum. It had to be a bunch of strong hits, really, to crumble through that floor. But just over and over again. Quick enough that we're still building momentum. He, claws his way up the side of the sewer wall a little bit. Just enough to, hold on with one hand and with his dominant hand just be punching at the floor as it crumbles away. Debris falls to his side into the rest of the pipe. And he's able to clamber up through this hole and is indeed inside this facility. With free reign of the place, it does not take long for him to be able to search around with his flashlight and find the nearest computer, because he knows that the real goal now is get Ironsides plugged into their system, trusting that Dash has indeed done this correctly, and have him take care of the rest. So Vert does exactly that. He finds a computer, hooks Ironside up to it, and hooks up an additional cable that will allow a more efficient transfer of power. And so between the two, his comlink is resting on top of the computer, which did not ordinarily have its own power, but it's now powering the computer and sending Ironsides into it. Ironsides begins taking over the computer system. Now, this being a military facility with heavy weaponry inside, they would definitely be protected against just kind of immediate attacks like this. So Ironside is basically a connection to Vert. And so because the way we're going to keep this simple, because I don't have stats for Ironsides and I'm not switching them off like this, we're going to say that it's as if Vert is doing this with his wits, but Ironside is giving him the +1 for helping him out on this process. So functionally, we're doing face danger with wits with a +1. And so as we attempt to break through the security, we get a strong hit. You are successful, take +1 momentum. Our momentum is now all the way up at 8. As we've broken through the outer layers, we know we have access to everything. And at this point, I don't think it's even a roll. Ironside with access can just take over this process. Ironside's voice pipes back through the speaker on the comlink, saying,
It is good to once again be alive. I have good news and bad news for the mission.
Well, what is it?
I have identified the location of the launch pad. However, nothing is currently loaded, and even if it were, based on the damage this facility has sustained, I would not trust any of the munitions to be in working order. Anything placed there could simply explode on the pad. It is going to require your physical inspection in order to be viable.
And so Ironside gives Vert the location of these munitions. And again, with nobody here, there's no particular obstacles in the way. Vert has all the time in the world to be able to do this. So he's able to get to that location. There are still some dangerous elements, though, because indeed the problem is that Vert needs to acquire a high-powered bomb, and the location of that has been provided by Ironside, but that bomb then needs to be loaded inside of an actual viable delivery mechanism, one of the missiles that it can be launched up into the air and exploded high up into the clouds to break the cloud cover and allow signals out. That means that Vert is going to have to transport a very high-powered and dangerous weapon and get it safely inside of a missile. And he's going to have to make sure that missile is up to the task of actually launching and not making it partway down and falling back to the ground. There are a lot of problems that could happen along the way. And so Vert stands in this corridor that he's arrived at, which is just lined with these ports in the wall where you can rotate a door and slide it out, where you can remove these sorts of cylinders that house volatile bombs inside. And he knows not all of them are full, but he's been given one in particular from Ironside that seems like it would be the most viable one to use. Based on computer readings, it seems to still be active. There's one there. It was responding well to diagnostics. Transporting it, however, must be done very carefully. But we've got a very nice high momentum right now. And so I think Vert is just going to rely on the fact that this powered armor, because it's full body covering and augmenting his strength and everything, it is relatively helpful with doing things in nice smooth motions. And so he is going to rely on that to just hold it well and keep it very steady as he walks about. So he's just going to do this very directly. It's just going to be an iron move. It's a very heavy payload, but he's just going to try and carry it to the launch pad. So let's face danger with iron. We get a weak hit. I could burn momentum to make it a strong hit, but a weak hit just means that I just have to make a suffer move of -1. And I think I'm just going to take that to my momentum. We go from 8 down to 7 because in order to do this carefully, he has to move very slowly because he's trying to make sure to never bump it against corners or anything like that. This is clearly not the way it's supposed to be moved. And there's even like a gantry system up above that could move it along the path to get to the launch pad. But the reason he doesn't use it is that he sees enough indications that he sees enough indications of just long wear that he doesn't trust it over his own strength. He thinks that it might give way. It's more likely to give way than his own strength and armor. So he just carries it all the way to the launch pad, where we're going to have to be more agile in loading this payload into the, this is about agility to get this actually loaded in correctly without, it can't just be a brute strength thing. So we're going to do one more face danger with edge as he's on the launch pad where there is a missile housing and he's going to try and get it loaded in correctly without fucking anything up and setting anything off. So we're using edge and I'm going to just be relying on our momentum here probably because we're not good at edge. All right, we get a weak hit. I'm not able to improve it with momentum, but it's still a weak hit. So again, we succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move -1. I'm again just going to lose momentum with it because again, he's just so slow and methodical with this because he doesn't trust his own capabilities. Now that it's loaded in, he's going to gather information before sending the word back to Ironside because he needs to make sure that this missile doesn't show any signs. Just examine anything about it to be able to tell whether or not it will be able to launch and see if there are any problems with its guidance systems, anything like that. So let's see what answers we come up with as we roll our wits. Okay, we get a weak hit, but I could burn momentum for a strong hit. And given where we are at this point, I think I'm going to do just that. We're going to get a full-on strong hit to discover that, yes, this one is ready to go. The housing is not sustaining any damage. Fins are all good. Everything, he runs like a quick diagnostic on the side of it, and everything seems to be operational. So we take +2 momentum as back at the console, Ironside recognizes that everything is hooked up and ready to go, detects the payload. We go back to the console as Vert walks back up to it and is standing next to the comm link and says to Ironside,
"Everything you should be reading is accurate. The payload is ready. Send it up and let's pray this works."
So we're going to do one final face danger here, which is all about actually launching this missile and exploding in the right part of the atmosphere to clear the cloud cover and then actually be able to send out a signal when that happens. During this time, Vert prepares the message that's going to be sent out because they probably won't have a long period of time. They can't count on it anyway. So before any of this happens, Vert records a message. Stops the recording. Ironside says,
"The message is ready to send. Initiating launch in 3, 2, 1.
And as one final move for this all, we're going to face danger wits with a +1 to launch this correctly and in the right part of the atmosphere. The +1 is going to come from Ironside being treated as a connection, just like before. Let's see if this can be pulled off. Get a weak hit. So we succeed, but not without a cost. Make a suffer move -1. The suffer move is just going to be that the explosion is bigger than anticipated. Utterly massive, which was necessary in order to clear the cloud cover. Unfortunately, it does also rock back so far as to blast into the remains of the city, including the facility itself. And because the facility is so unmaintained, a huge section of the ceiling falls in. It hits the floor and another huge chunk of it knocks into Vert. If it weren't for his power armor, it could have easily done significantly more damage, but the armor protects him from the worst of it, making it only a suffer move of -1. That being said, he is going to try and endure that. Getting a weak hit. He's not wounded, so he could lose 1 momentum in exchange for 1 health, which he's indeed going to do. I'll set my momentum down to just a +2 and go our health back up to +3. The armor indeed helps him out. He's able to shrug it off for the most part. And most importantly, as we go back up to Emile and Fern listening in the cockpit, they hear that very same message.
My name is Vert of the Crux. We're at coordinate 7BX9JJ of the Forgotten Channel. I'm not alone, but we have crash landed with our ship located at latitude 58.1559 north, longitude 185.3847 east. This is an absolute SOS Mayday need evacuation. Our ship is not going to be able to get us out of here. If you are hearing this message, please send help.
Emile turns to Fern and says, "Looks like returning you to the planet isn't the only reason to go down there. Let's move." But another thing happens as well. As we go to the inside of the Crux and see Dash holed up inside in the cockpit, keeping themselves safe from all harm, when the cloud cover moves, Dash has signal again through the cloud cover and updates their internet in the sector. As over time they reacquire things to their email account, populating, messages come through, and we see that Dash has a message. It's from a fellow Vault Hunter. And the message establishes an enemy of the clan known as Emile Spencer. But as for what's going to happen when Dash, Vert, and Ironside meet Emile, well, that's a question for next time. A bit of trivia for this episode, I actually recorded it on my birthday. And so if you're looking to get me a present, I would ask that you find somebody that you think might enjoy this show and tell them about it. Tell them all about Left Behind. You're clearly enjoying it, you're at episode 23. Or you're just really, really enduring it. But anyway, we're in the outro, so let me give you the prompts. This week, I think we need to figure out what is Vert's mutation going to be. He got a big dose of radiation from one of those mantises just like Emile did. We need to figure out how he's going to mutate when that finally manifests. And so I want you to send me your ideas based on the action and theme of create and innocence. Now, like the other time that I did this for game content, the reality is unfortunately that any ideas that you send me at starforgepod@gmail.com, they're not going to get here before I've recorded a next episode anyway. I'm going to use those same ones to try and come up with something myself, but I'd love to hear what your ideas are and we can see how they differ. So again, starforgepod@gmail.com. Send me your ideas. I love seeing them. That would be another way you could get me a present. I just want to hear your ideas. The important thing is, it's my birthday, so do the things. Play me out, music.